Maya's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips when she saw him across the crowded ballroom, his familiar laugh cutting through the elegant chatter of the alumni fundraiser. Like a blade through silk. 10 years. 10 years since she'd walked away from everything from him to chase her architectural dreams in London. Now, standing in the grand hall of their old college, adorned in a midnight blue gown that had cost more than her entire wardrobe back then, she felt 17 again, vulnerable, uncertain. Farhan stood near the silent auction table, his once wild curls now neatly trimmed, wearing a charcoal suit that emphasized the broader shoulders. She remembered tracing with trembling fingers. He was speaking animatedly with Professor Williams, their old literature teacher, but Maya could see the subtle changes, the faint lines around his eyes, the way he carried himself with more gravitas than the passionate boy she'd loved. Maya. Zara, is that really you? She turned to find Sarah, her old roommate, approaching with wide eyes and an even wider smile. The distraction gave her a moment to compose herself, but when she looked back, Farhan was gone. I can't believe you're here, Sarah continued, pulling her into an enthusiastic hug. When did you get back to the States? Last I heard, you were designing some incredible, sustainable housing project in Barcelona. 3 months ago, Maya replied, her eyes still scanning the room. I opened a branch of my firm in New York. This seemed like the perfect opportunity to reconnect with old friends. Old friends. The words tasted bitter on her tongue. You look absolutely stunning. Success suits you. Sarah's voice dropped conspiratorially. Have you seen Professor Malik? There you are. Maya's breath caught as the familiar voice, deeper now but unmistakably his, sounded behind her. She turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs like a caged bird. Farhan stood 3 feet away, close enough that she could catch the faint scent of his cologne, different from the cheap aftershave he'd worn in college, but somehow still fundamentally him. His dark eyes met hers, and for a moment, the crowded ballroom faded away. Maya. Her name fell from his lips like a prayer, soft and wondering. Farhan. She managed to keep her voice steady, professional. You look well. Sarah, sensing the sudden tension, mumbled something about checking the dessert table and disappeared into the crowd, leaving them alone in their bubble of shared history. Professor Malik. Maya raised an eyebrow, grasping for safe ground. Should I be impressed? A ghost of his old smile flickered across his face. Associate professor, actually. I teach contemporary literature here now. Have been for the past 5 years, following in your father's footsteps after all. She remembered how he'd sworn he'd never become an academic, how he'd wanted to travel the world, write the great American novel. Some paths choose us, I suppose. His eyes searched her face, cataloging changes, and you, still building dreams into reality, something like that. The conversation felt surreal, polite and distant when once they'd shared every thought, every secret. I heard you're. She stopped herself. She'd been about to mention his daughter, but admitting she'd kept tabs on his life through mutual friends felt too revealing. Married. He shook his head. Divorced, actually. 2 years now. The word hung between them, loaded with possibilities and complications Maya wasn't sure she was ready to explore. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it. Don't be. We married young, for the wrong reasons. Sometimes the brave thing is admitting when something isn't working. His gaze intensified. Though I suppose you knew something about brave choices. There it was, the first reference to what had happened between them, wrapped in careful politeness but sharp as a knife. Maya felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to crack. Farhan. Maya. Oh my God, Maya. A whirlwind of emerald silk and jasmine perfume enveloped her as Zara, another college friend, swept her into an enthusiastic embrace. More classmates materialized as if summoned, and suddenly Maya found herself in the center of an impromptu reunion, answering questions about London, her work, her very conspicuous lack of a wedding ring. Through it all, she was aware of Farhan watching from the periphery, nursing a glass of wine and occasionally joining the conversation with carefully neutral comments. The years had taught him restraint, she realized. The passionate, impulsive boy who had once declared his love for her in the middle of the college library had learned to hide behind professorial politeness. As the evening wore on, Maya found herself stealing glances at him, noting the way he deflected personal questions, how he excused himself whenever the conversation turned to relationships or the past. She wondered if he was thinking about their last night together, the promises made and broken, the tears, the way she'd slipped out of his apartment before dawn without saying goodbye. The fundraiser was winding down when she finally broke away from the group, seeking refuge on the terrace that overlooked the college quadrangle. The night air was cool against her heated skin, and she closed her eyes, trying to center herself, running away again. His voice was quiet, lacking the accusation she expected. She opened her eyes to find him standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the warm light spilling from the ballroom. Just needed some air. She turned back to the view, her hands gripping the stone balustrade. It's overwhelming, seeing everyone. Again, is it? He stepped closer, his presence both comforting and unsettling. Or is it just seeing me? Maya's fingers tightened on the cold stone as Farhan moved to stand beside her, careful to maintain distance yet close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. The college quadrangle stretched before them, moonlight casting long shadows across the paths they'd once walked hand in hand. You know, he said softly, his gaze fixed on the old oak tree where they'd carved their initials sophomore year. I used to come out here sometimes, especially during my first year teaching. I'd imagine what I'd say if I ever saw you again. Maya's throat constricted. And what did you imagine saying? Angry things, mostly. About how you left without explanation, without giving us a chance to work through it together. He paused, his voice dropping. But also, I imagined asking if you were happy, if it was worth it. The question hung in the night air like mist. Maya closed her eyes, remembering the morning she'd left, how she'd watched him sleep, memorizing the curve of his jaw, the way his hair fell across his forehead, how she'd written and rewritten a letter she'd never had the courage to leave behind. I got the scholarship, she said finally, the one to the Royal College of Art in London. Full ride, plus a stipend. It was everything I'd dreamed of since freshman year. I know. His voice was barely above a whisper. I saw the letter on your desk that last night. Maya's eyes flew open, and she turned to face him. You knew. I knew you'd applied. I knew how much it meant to you. What I didn't know was why you couldn't tell me yourself. The pain in his voice was raw, unguarded. We were supposed to figure out our future together. Maya, that was the plan. What future? The words erupted from her with surprising vehemence. You were talking about marriage, kids, a little house with a white picket fence. You wanted me to turn down the opportunity of a lifetime to play house. That's not. He ran a hand through his hair, the composed professor facade cracking. That's not what I wanted. I wanted you. However that looked, wherever it led us. I would have waited. I would have come with you. Would you really? Maya challenged, her own walls crumbling. Or would you have resented me for taking you away from everything you knew? Your family, your friends, your plans for graduate school here? We'll never know, will we? Because you made that choice for both of us. The accusation hit its mark, and Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. I was 22 years old. Farhan, I was terrified of making the wrong choice, and I couldn't bear the thought of you sacrificing your dreams for mine, so you sacrificed ours instead. The silence stretched between them, filled with a decade of unspoken words and what-ifs. Maya wiped at her eyes, grateful for the moonlight that hid her tears. I thought about calling, she admitted, hundreds of times, especially those first few months in London. But what was I supposed to say? Sorry I broke your heart. But guess what? I'm miserable too, were you? The question was soft, vulnerable. Miserable. Maya's laugh was bitter. For the first year, absolutely. I threw myself into my studies, into work, into anything that would stop me from thinking about what I'd left behind. About you. And after that, I convinced myself I'd made the right choice. I built a career, traveled the world, designed buildings that will outlast us all. I had relationships, some of them good. I told myself I was living the life I'd always wanted. But the simple word opened a floodgate Maya hadn't realized she'd been holding back. But I never stopped wondering, never stopped thinking about you, about us, every time I walked through a college campus, every time I saw a couple laughing together the way we used to, She shook her head. I kept your picture for 5 years before I finally put it away. I still have it. Farhan's intake of breath was sharp, and when she looked at him, his dark eyes were intense, searching. Maya, your turn, she said quickly, before she could lose her nerve. Tell me about her. Your ex-wife. The change of subject was jarring, but Farhan accepted it, perhaps understanding that they needed to map the terrain of the past decade before they could navigate the present. Amira, he said. I met her 3 years after you left. She was a graduate student in the English department, brilliant, kind. She understood literature the way you understood. Buildings could see the beauty and structure in things that seemed chaotic to the rest of us. Maya felt a stab of something that might have been jealousy. Though she had no right to it, we married quickly, maybe too quickly, I think. He paused, choosing his words carefully. I think we were both trying to prove something, that we could build something lasting, something real. Layla came along 2 years later. Layla. Maya tested the name, thinking of the little girl she'd seen in photos on social media, with Farhan's dark eyes and a smile that could light up the world. She's 7 now, smart as a whip, stubborn as her father. His voice softened with unmistakable love. She's the best thing I've ever done with my life. And Amira, we grew apart. Different dreams, different ideas about what family should look like. The divorce was difficult, but civil. We share custody, and Layla is happy, which is all that matters. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Farhan was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the moonlight. Are you really? The question was loaded with implication, and Maya felt her cheeks burn. That's not fair, isn't it? You're telling me that in all these years, you never wondered what might have happened if you'd stayed, if we'd found a way to make it work. Of course I wondered. The admission came out fierce, unguarded, but wondering and acting on it are two different things. I made my choice, and I lived with it. And now what? Now you're here. We're here, standing in the same place where we used to dream about the future, and I find myself wondering again. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the silver threads in his hair, the fine lines that spoke of laughter and sorrow and the weight of years. Are you happy, Maya? Really, truly happy? The question she'd been avoiding all evening, maybe all decade, hung between them like a challenge. Maya looked out over the quadrangle, at the dormitory windows glowing gold with student life, at the paths that led to libraries and lecture halls, and possibilities she'd once abandoned for dreams across an ocean. I don't know, she whispered. I thought I was. I convinced myself I was. But being here, seeing you. She turned to meet his gaze. I don't know anymore. Farhan reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her cheek. Then maybe it's time we both stopped pretending we have all the answers. The morning sun slanted through the tall windows of the campus cafe, casting golden rectangles across the small table where Maya sat, her hands wrapped around a cooling cup of coffee. She'd barely slept after their encounter on the terrace, Farhan's words echoing in her mind until dawn crept through her hotel room curtains. She almost didn't come to meet him, almost called to cancel their breakfast, invented some excuse about client calls or flight changes. But something deeper than curiosity had drawn her here, a need to understand what the years had really taken from them both. You came. She looked up to find Farhan approaching, looking more casual than she'd seen him in years. Gone was the professorial composure. In its place was something rawer, more uncertain. He'd traded his suit for dark jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms she remembered tracing with wondering fingers. I said I would. She gestured to the chair across from her. Though I'm not entirely sure why. He sat down, signaling the barista for coffee. Maybe because we have unfinished business, do we? Maya studied his face, looking for traces of the boy she'd loved beneath the man he'd become. Or are we just a people trying to make sense of choices we made when we were too young to understand their true cost? Maybe both. His coffee arrived, and he took a sip, his eyes never leaving hers. I have something to show you. He pulled out his phone, swiping through photos until he found what he was looking for. When he turned the screen toward her, Maya's breath caught. It was a picture of a little girl with serious dark eyes and pigtails, standing in front of an easel, paintbrush in hand. Her small face was scrunched in concentration as she worked on what appeared to be a watercolor of a building, abstract but unmistakably architectural in its lines and angles. "Layla," Maya asked, though she already knew. "She's been drawing buildings since she could hold a crayon. Keeps asking me about the people who design them, how they know what shape dreams should take." His smile was soft, paternal. "I tell her about this brilliant architect I knew once, who could see beauty where others saw only space and possibility." Maya's throat tightened. "Farhan, she wants to meet you." The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back. "When I told her you were in town, she got so excited. She's been working on a special drawing all week." The simple statement hit Maya like a physical blow. She'd prepared herself for many things: anger, recrimination, even the possibility of rekindled attraction. But she hadn't prepared for this. A 7-year-old girl who drew buildings and wanted to meet the woman who'd broken her father's heart. "I don't think that's a good idea," she said carefully. "Why not?" Because Maya struggled for words that wouldn't sound cruel. "Because I'm leaving again. My flight back to New York is tomorrow afternoon. And then I'll be traveling for the next month: Milan, Tokyo, back to London for a conference. I'm not staying, Farhan, I know." His voice was quiet but steady. "I'm not asking you to stay. I'm not asking you for anything except maybe an hour with a little girl who loves buildings and would be over the moon to meet someone who brings them to life." Maya stared at the photo, at Layla's earnest expression and paint-stained fingers. "What did you tell her about me?" "The truth. That you were my friend in college. That you became an architect. That you designed beautiful buildings all over the world." He paused. "That I cared about you very much." Cared. Past tense? The question slipped out before Maya could stop it, and she saw Farhan's hands tighten around his coffee cup. "Is it past tense for you?" he asked instead of answering. Maya's phone buzzed against the table, a text from her assistant about the Milan project, reality intruding on this strange suspension of time. She glanced at it automatically, then looked back at Farhan, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. 10 years, she said softly. 10 years I've been telling myself that leaving was the right choice, that love wasn't enough when dreams pulled in different directions, that I was protecting both of us from the resentment that would have come later. And now I see you, and I remember what it felt like to be known by someone, really known. Not just the successful parts, not just the polished professional version, but all of it. The fears, the hopes, the way I used to sketch buildings on every available surface when I was nervous." She pulled out her own phone, scrolling through her photos until she found the one she was looking for. It was a picture of her latest project, a sustainable housing complex in Barcelona. All flowing lines and integrated gardens. "The meditation center," she said, turning the screen toward him. "The one that made the cover of Architectural Digest last month. Do you know what inspired the design?" Farhan shook his head, leaning forward to study the image. "That poem you used to quote, by Rumi, about the wound being the place where light enters you." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I've been designing around that concept for years without even realizing it. Creating spaces for healing, for transformation, as if some part of me was still trying to make sense of what we lost." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implication. Maya watched as Farhan processed her words, saw the moment understanding dawned in his eyes. Maya. Her name was a caress, a question, a homecoming all at once. "I know I don't have the right to ask," she continued, "but I need to understand something. The divorce, was it really about growing apart? Or was it about the fact that you never got over what we had?" The question was brutal in its directness, and Maya saw Farhan flinch as if she'd struck him. "That's not fair to Amira." "I'm not asking about Amira. I'm asking about you, about us. About whether the reason your marriage failed is because some part of you was still holding onto something that ended a decade ago." Farhan was quiet for so long that Maya began to regret the question. She was about to apologize when he spoke, his voice raw with honesty. Double quotes, yes. The single word carried the weight of years, not consciously, not deliberately. "I loved Amira, I did. But you're right, there was always a part of me that you took with you when you left. A part one never got back." The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Maya felt tears threaten again, a combination of grief for the pain she'd caused and something dangerously close to hope. The worst part, Farhan continued, is that I think she knew. Towards the end, Amira would sometimes catch me looking at old photos. Or I'd get that distant look when we passed the quadrangle. She never said anything, but I think she understood that she was competing with a ghost. Farhan, let me finish. His voice was gentle but firm. I need to say this. The divorce was my fault. Not because I didn't try to make it work, but because I married Amira for the wrong reasons. I was trying to prove to myself that I could love someone else, that I could build the life I'd planned with you, with someone else instead. It wasn't fair to her, and it wasn't fair to Layla. Maya reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. The contact sent electricity up her arm, and she saw him shiver at the touch. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry for all of it, for leaving, for not fighting harder for us, for causing so much pain. We both made choices, he said, his thumb tracing across her knuckles in a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. The question is, what do we do now? Before Maya could answer, her phone rang. The Milan number flashed on the screen. Her client, calling about the site visit she was scheduled for next week. For a moment, she considered letting it go to voicemail, but professional instinct won out. I have to take this, she said apologetically, pulling her hand away. It'll just be a minute. As she answered the call, conducting a hurried conversation about permits and engineering reports, she saw Farhan watching her with an expression that was part resignation, part understanding. When she hung up, he was already reaching for his wallet. The real world intrudes, he said with a sad smile. It doesn't have to. The words came out before Maya could stop them. I mean, yes, I have to handle this, but could I meet her, Layla? This afternoon, maybe. Before I have to leave. The hope that flared in Farhan's eyes was almost painful to witness. Are you sure? Maya thought about the little girl in the photo, about dreams deferred and second chances, about the weight of choices made and unmade. I'm sure. The playground behind the college's family housing was bustling with weekend activity, children on swings, parents chatting on benches, the comfortable chaos of family life that Maya had observed from a distance for so many years. She stood at the edge of the playground, smoothing her sundress nervously and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. There she is. Farhan's voice drew her attention to a small figure, racing across the grass, dark pigtails flying behind her. Layla was smaller than Maya had expected, all legs and elbows and boundless energy. But when she skidded to a stop in front of Maya, her serious dark eyes so much like her father's studied her, with an intensity that was both endearing and slightly unnerving. You're the building lady, Layla announced, as if this explained everything. I am, Maya said, crouching down to Layla's eye level. And you must be the artist your dad told me about. I brought my drawings. Layla held up a worn backpack with evident excitement. Daddy said you might want to see them. Do you want to see them? I drew the library and the clock tower, and also a house that looks like a tree. Maya glanced up at Farhan, who was approaching with a fond but slightly anxious expression. I would love to see them. They settled on a picnic table under a large maple tree, Layla between them as she carefully extracted a portfolio of drawings from her backpack. Her work was impressive for a 7-year-old. Buildings rendered with surprising attention to detail. Fantastical structures that seemed to grow from the earth itself. This one's my favorite, Layla said, pointing to a watercolor of what appeared to be a school with gardens on its roof and walls that curved like embracing arms. It's where kids who are sad can go to feel better. See, there are windows everywhere so the light can get in, and gardens where they can grow their own food. Maya's breath caught. The concept was sophisticated, the execution raw but heartfelt. That's beautiful. Layla, tell me about the gardens. As Layla launched into an enthusiastic explanation of her healing school design, Maya found herself genuinely engaged, asking questions about structural elements and design choices with the same seriousness she'd apply to a professional consultation. The little girl's face glowed with the attention, her answers revealing an intuitive understanding of how spaces could affect emotions. Daddy says you build real buildings, Layla said eventually, having exhausted her explanations. Have you ever built a school like mine? Not exactly like yours, but I've designed buildings meant to help people heal. Would you like to see some pictures? For the next hour, Maya found herself sharing her work through the eyes of a child, explaining sustainable architecture and healing spaces in language Layla could understand. The little girl was an engaged audience, asking questions that sometimes cut straight to the heart of design philosophy with the clarity that only children possessed. Why did you go so far away to build things? Layla asked suddenly, her small finger tracing the outline of the Barcelona project on Maya's phone screen. Daddy says there are buildings here that need to be built too. The innocent question hit Maya like a punch to the solar plexus. She looked up to find Farhan watching her, his expression carefully neutral, and realized that this was the question at the heart of everything. Not just her career choices, but the choices that had shaped all their lives. Sometimes, Maya said carefully, we have to go far away to learn how to build the things we really wanted to build. And sometimes we don't realize what we really wanted to build until we've been away for a while. Layla considered this with the gravity of a much older person. But you came back. I did come back. Are you going to stay and build things here now? Maya's throat tightened. I don't know yet. Sweetheart, it's complicated. Adults always say things are complicated, Layla said with the philosophical air of someone who'd heard this excuse many times. But it's not really complicated. Either you want to be somewhere or you don't. The simple truth of it was staggering. Maya looked at the 7-year-old with her earnest eyes and paint-stained fingers, and felt as if she'd been stripped bare by a child's wisdom. Layla, why don't you go play on the swings for a few minutes? Farhan suggested gently. Ms. Maya, and I need to talk about some grown-up things. Boring grown-up things. Layla sighed dramatically, but she gathered her drawings and skipped off toward the playground equipment, calling back, don't talk too long. I want to show Ms. Maya my treehouse design. Maya watched her go. This remarkable little person who carried so much of her father in her gestures and expressions. When she turned back to Farhan, she found him studying her with an unreadable expression. She likes you, he said simply. I like her too. She's extraordinary, Farhan. You've done an amazing job. We've done an amazing job. Amira and I both. He paused. She's the reason I can't regret the marriage, you know, even with all the pain. All the ways it went wrong. Layla is pure joy, pure possibility. Maya nodded, understanding flooding through her. She's lucky to have you both, Maya. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. The seriousness in his tone made her tense. Okay. Last night, when you said you didn't know if you were happy, did you mean it? Because if this is just nostalgia, if seeing me again is just stirring up old memories that you'll put away again, when you get back to your real life. He ran a hand through his hair. I can't do that again. More importantly, I can't put Layla through that. What do you mean? I mean, she's already talking about you like you're going to be part of our lives now. She wants to show you her room, her art supplies, the garden she's trying to grow in the backyard. She's 7, Maya. She doesn't understand temporary. The weight of responsibility settled on Maya's shoulders like a heavy cloak. She'd been so focused on her own feelings, her own confusion about what seeing Farhan again meant, that she hadn't considered the collateral impact of her uncertainty. I wouldn't hurt her, she said softly, not intentionally. But if you leave again, if you disappear back into your international life and become just another story. I tell her about the past. His voice was rough with emotion. She's already lost one mother figure. I won't let her lose another. The reference to his divorce, to Layla's adjustment to her parents' separation, was like a slap of cold reality. This wasn't just about Maya and Farhan anymore. It was about a little girl who drew healing buildings and asked impossible questions with absolute clarity. What are you asking me? Maya whispered. I'm asking if you're serious about reconsidering your life, or if you're just indulging in what-ifs. Because if it's the latter, I need you to walk away now, before she gets more attached. Maya looked across the playground to where Layla was attempting to cross the monkey bars, her small face scrunched with determination. As she watched, the little girl made it halfway across before her grip failed and she dropped to the sand below. Instead of crying or giving up, she brushed herself off and immediately started again. "She's like you," Maya said suddenly, determined, fearless, willing to try again even when it hurts. "Maya, I don't have all the answers," she interrupted, her voice gaining strength. "I don't know exactly what staying would look like, or how I'd restructure my career, or even if what we had can be rekindled after all these years." But watching her, listening to her questions, she turned to meet his gaze. "Maybe she's right. Maybe it's not as complicated as we're making it." "What does that mean?" "It means I want to try. Not just to see what happens between us, but to see what it would feel like to build something here. Instead of always running toward the next project, the next city, the next achievement." She took a shaky breath. "It means I want to stay and see if I can design a life instead of just buildings." Farhan's intake of breath was sharp, hopeful. "Maya, but I need time," she continued quickly. "I have commitments, projects that need to be finished or transferred. I can't just abandon everything overnight. And you need to be sure that this isn't just unfinished business. Sure that you're not just trying to recapture something that might be better left in the past." "How much time?" 6 months, she said, the timeline materializing with surprising clarity. "Give me 6 months to arrange things, to figure out how to relocate the parts of my practice that matter most, and use that time to think about what you really want, not just what you think you want, because I'm here stirring up old feelings." Farhan was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving between Maya and his daughter, who had successfully made it across the monkey bars and was now waving enthusiastically in their direction. 6 months, he repeated thoughtfully. And then we see what we've built." 6 months later, Maya stood in the doorway of her new office. Boxes still stacked against the walls, but sunlight streaming through the windows that overlooked the college quad. The space was smaller than her London headquarters, more intimate than her temporary New York branch, but it felt right in a way that surprised her. Through the window, she could see students walking the same path she and Farhan had once traveled. And instead of nostalgia, she felt possibility. The move hadn't been easy, relocating parts of her practice, convincing key clients to work with her remotely, finding the right local team. It had required every ounce of determination she'd built over a decade of international success. But for the first time in years, she was building something for herself, not just for the achievement or recognition, but because it felt like home. Knock, knock. She turned to find Farhan in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee and wearing the warm smile that had been appearing more frequently. Over the past few months of careful courtship, they'd taken it slowly: dinners, long walks, conversations that stretched late into the night as they mapped the territory of who they'd become. It had been like learning to trust again, both with each other and with the possibility that love could be more than just passion. It could be choice, commitment, the daily decision to build something together. "Layla's art delivery service," he announced, stepping aside to reveal his daughter, her arms full of rolled papers tied with ribbons. "For your new office," Layla declared, setting her burden down carefully on Maya's desk. "I made welcome presents." Maya's throat tightened with emotion as she untied the first ribbon, revealing a watercolor of her new building with fantastical additions: gardens cascading from every window, bridges connecting it to the other campus buildings, and tiny figures that look suspiciously like the 3 of them standing in front of the entrance. "It's perfect," Maya said, and meant it. "Should we hang it right here, where everyone can see it when they come in?" "Yes, and this one too." Layla unrolled another drawing, a floor plan of a house, with labels in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. "Maya's art room, Daddy's book room, Layla's room with princess walls, and in the center, family room for being together." Maya's breath caught. Over the past months, she and Farhan had carefully avoided discussions of the future beyond her return, both of them gun-shy about making assumptions or moving too fast. But Layla, with a child's directness, had apparently been designing their life together with characteristic optimism. "Layla," Farhan said gently, "remember what we talked about?" Ms. Maya just moved here, and actually, Maya interrupted, her heart pounding with the rightness of the moment. "I think Layla might be onto something." She looked up to find Farhan watching her with cautious hope, and felt the last of her carefully constructed walls crumble. These 6 months apart had taught her something crucial. Love wasn't just about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about choosing each other daily, about building something sustainable and beautiful from the foundation up. What I mean is, Maya continued, moving closer to where Farhan stood. I've spent 6 months thinking about what I really wanted to build with my life. And it's not just buildings anymore. Maya, Farhan's voice was soft, wondering. I want to build a practice that matters here, in this community. I want to design spaces that help people heal, the way Layla envisions them. But more than that, she reached for his hand, felt his fingers intertwined with hers with perfect familiarity. I want to build a life with you, both of you. Layla let out a whoop of joy that probably carried across the entire quad, launching herself at Maya in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked them both over. Over the little girl's head, Maya met Farhan's eyes and saw her own certainty reflected there. Are you sure? He asked, even as his free hand came up to cup her cheek. Because once we do this, once we really try to build something together, I'm not going to be able to let you go again. Good, Maya whispered, leaning into his touch. Because I'm done running away from the best thing that ever happened to me. The kiss, when it came, was soft and sure and tasted like coming home. It was different from the desperate passion of their youth, deeper, more grounded, weighted with the knowledge of what they'd almost lost and gratitude for what they'd found again. EWW, grown-up kissing, Layla declared, but she was grinning as she said it, already pulling out colored pencils to start work on what appeared to be wedding dress designs. 3 months later, Maya stood in another doorway, this time the entrance to the small chapel on campus where she and Farhan had once attended midnight Christmas services. As students, she wore a simple dress of ivory silk, her dark hair loose around her shoulders, and carried a bouquet of wildflowers that Layla had helped her pick that morning. The ceremony was small, intimate, just family and close friends. Professor Williams officiating with tears in his eyes as he pronounced them husband and wife. Layla served as both flower girl and ring bearer, taking her duties with characteristic seriousness until the moment Maya and Farhan were pronounced married, at which point she cheered loudly enough to make the stained glass windows ring. The reception was held in the same ballroom where they'd reunited a year earlier, but this time Maya felt no anxiety, no urge to flee. This time, when Farhan took her hand for their first dance, she knew she was exactly where she belonged. No regrets. He murmured against her ear as they swayed to music that seemed written just for them. Only one, Maya replied, pulling back to meet his gaze, that it took us so long to find our way back to each other. Maybe we needed the journey, Farhan suggested. Maybe we had to become who we were meant to be separately before we could build something together. Maya considered this as she looked around the room at Layla teaching her new step-grandmother to draw architectural details on napkins, at their friends from college now married with children of their own, at the life they were all building, in the spaces between who they'd been and who they were becoming. Maybe you're right, she agreed. Maybe some foundations take time to cure properly. As the song ended, Maya felt a tug on her dress and looked down to find Layla holding up a new drawing, this one of the three of them standing in front of a house that looked remarkably like the Victorian they'd just put an offer on, complete with Maya's home office addition and Farhan's library tower. This is us, Layla announced with satisfaction. Our real house. Are you going to build it exactly like this? Maya laughed, picking up her new daughter and spinning her round. We'll build it together, all of us. And as the evening wore on, as they danced and laughed and celebrated the life they were choosing to build together, Maya realized that this was what she'd been searching for all along, not just success or recognition, or even love, but the chance to create something lasting with the people who mattered most. The little girl who had once asked why things had to be complicated had been right all along. Sometimes the most profound truths were the simplest ones. Either you wanted to be somewhere, or you didn't. Either you chose love or you chose fear. Either you built something together or you built walls that kept you apart. Maya had finally chosen to build something beautiful. Years later, as Maya tucked an 11-year-old Layla into bed in the house they designed and built together, her daughter asked the question that would stay with her. Mama Maya, Do you think people always get second chances at happiness? Or did you and Daddy just get really lucky? What do you think? Are second chances at true love a matter of luck, timing, and circumstance, or is it possible that some connections are strong enough to survive years of separation and growth, waiting for the right moment to bloom again? Can two people who've built separate lives successfully merge them into something even more beautiful? Or are we just romanticizing the idea that love conquers all practical obstacles?